So, lives remembered, futures reclaimed is the theme for this year. We've talked about the lives remembered. I read 41 names. There are many, many more that are not talked about. Many more that weren't on that list. In fact, recently, there was a transgender swimmer who had been an advocate for transgender rights. She had done great things, been out, talking to people, and she wound up committing suicide. So it's not something that you can see coming, because unless you're in their situation, you don't know all the attacks that they're receiving. So understanding transgender can be hard. For so long, we always thought male and female. We were told if you had XY chromosomes, then you were male. But what we found is that that's not true. There was a 54-year-old woman in Australia that went in. She was pregnant with her 4th child. She went into the doctor, and they decided that they were going to do some genetic testing because of her age. What they found was that she had what's called Swyer syndrome. She had 46 XY chromosomes, but yet she presented as female, had female reproductive organs. But technically, if you go back to when we defined male and female as XY, as male, then you'd be calling her a male. She's not a male. So it's not so cut and dry when you're looking at male and female, and we're finally realizing that. And transgender is a broad term. We use trans for short, but it can be a female transitioning to male. It can be male transitioning to female. It can be non-binary, not really claiming either male or female. There are people that are born with both attributes. And a lot of times, the doctor and the parents at the time of birth will make the decision, is this going to be a male or a female? A lot of times, unless the child gets some kind of idea that maybe something might have happened, and they go back and get their records, their medical records, they have no idea that it happened. So the parents may have said, yeah, well, we're gonna go with male. And so they do the procedure to make sure that that's what happens. What if later on the person decides, I don't think I'm male, but that decision was made for them. So those are some of the things that you deal with when you're looking at dealing with sex at birth. The gender identity is your internal knowledge of your gender. Who you know yourself to be. Your gender expression is how you present. And those can be two different things. And everybody has a gender identity. Everybody in this room has a gender identity. You may be cisgender, or you may be trans, you may be gay, you may be lesbian. But everybody has an identity. Can I get a show of hands for everybody who is either was born redhead or knows a redhead? Okay. All right. Statistically, there are the same number of people who are transgender as there are redheads. Now, you may say, well, I don't know any transgender people. But you probably do. You probably do. Other than, obviously you know me, but you probably do. Probably don't even realize it. So as we read the names of the people that have either committed suicide or been killed this year, it makes it real. I can tell you statistics all day long. I can give you numbers and I can tell you what's happening. But until we put faces and names to those numbers, it doesn't really hit. I think we've gotten so used to hearing all the negative with everything going on in the world that we kind of become a little bit immune to what's happening to the transgender community. But there are some numbers that I do want to go over, and this is a study that came out in November. And this is over the last 12 months prior to that. 7 in 10 of the victims of hate crimes against transgender people were people of color. 7 in 10. 7 in 10 of all victims were transgender women. 6 in 10 of all victims were transgender women of color. And then half were black transgender women. Victims were an average age of 31.7 years old at the time of death. Over 3 out of 10 victims knew their killer. It was somebody that either a family member or a friend that killed them. Victims were identified in 32 different cities across 22 different states. When I was reading the names, I mentioned we had one in Austin, we have one in San Antonio. Again, these are the ones that are reported. How many more are there? We don't really know. I've been told by many people in this room right here that I'm brave for what I do, for the testifying at the Capitol and the standing up. And I'm not brave. I'm doing what I do. There are so many things going on, so many attacks coming at our community, that it's my duty because I'm privileged. I was born into an upper middle class, white family. I was given all the, experience and the opportunity for education. I have a lot of privilege, and I recognize that privilege. And because of that, I stand up and I speak. I can go into the Capitol, and I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid somebody's going to come, try to arrest me. I actually go into the men's restroom, and I'm not afraid. But not everybody can say that. You see, back in April, we had our Equality Advocacy Day. And we met at a theater just up from the Capitol. And one of the things that I thought was the saddest thing I saw happen was they had a piece of paper that had pictures and names of people. And they said, take a picture of this. Remember these people. Because these are the ones that are going to be harassing you at the Capitol. I was like, okay. When we got there and we had our rally, yes, they were there. They were, doing their little yelling and stuff. We just proceeded with what we were doing. But here's something that happened. And they also told us, because this was on Monday, on Friday, the Capitol had made the rule that you could only go to the restroom that matched your sex assigned at birth. So in the basement, now if this reminds you of the colored water fountains, in the basement, there are 2 restrooms that are called family restrooms. We were allowed to go there. When we got down there, one of them had feces smeared all over it, so they'd closed it. And then they decided just to close the other one. So, the restrooms we were allowed to use were now locked. During the time that I was walking through and actually trying to meet with Carrie Isaac, yeah, that was fun. But I was told that there were people outside the women's restroom videoing people going into the women's restroom. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, the people with the problem are the people that are videoing people going into the bathroom. But these are just some of the things that transgender people face in everyday life. again, I'm privileged. My transition has been very quick, very quick. It does not typically happen this way. There are, typically it's around 6 months of being on testosterone before you even see any kind of beard. And it takes 2 to 5 years to actually grow a beard. Your muscle mass and your strength increase within like 12 months typically, full effect in about 5 years. Mine is way past that. So a lot of things that female to male trans people experience takes a lot longer. So again, that's why I say I'm privileged. One of the things, though, that you deal with, for instance, is name change. I had done something for somebody here in the congregation, and they had written me a check. Hunter. So I had to tell them, I can't cash this, because they didn't even think. It's not something that you would think about. I was at a restaurant the other day, and there were several people sitting at this table, and they took credit cards to pay for the meal. And so the waitress came back over, and she said, I need to make sure I have the right credit cards. Who's Vicky? Me. So it's things like that that you don't even think about transgender people are dealing with. This congregation has not missed a beat. I don't ever hear that other name, ever, from anybody. So that's pretty amazing. Here in Texas, we can do a name change, which I will be going through that process. But they're not allowing us to change our gender markers. Abbott has said no. Now, hopefully, that will change in the future. But that's a no. The United States government has decided that transgender people cannot put their gender identity on their passport. It has to be the sex assigned at birth. So these are things that in your everyday life you don't think about. You don't think about transgender people dealing with those kind of things. So when you hear the overt things that are happening, you have to realize that there's a lot of other underneath that's happening as well. What I want people to take away from today, though, is not the sadness of the names that I read off. It's not the sadness of the things that are happening. I want us to think about the possibilities, the futures reclaimed, what is possible, what we can do. This past legislative session in Texas, we were number one in the number of bad bills filed against the LGBT community. Number one. There were 1,000 bills filed throughout, 1,011 filed throughout the United States. We had 139. More than 10% of all the total bills. Now, I mentioned testifying at the Capitol. I was there many days, many long days. 10 of the bills of the 139 passed, 8 failed. The rest of them are either in limbo or they're a duplicate of something that either passed or failed. But when you look at 139 bills and only 10 passed, that's a success, and we have to celebrate that. The bathroom bill that passed was a minor bill compared to the others that they wanted to pass. So that was a win. We have to take pride and joy in the things that we do accomplish, and know that when we don't accomplish what we want, we just have to go back and fight again. And that's what we're doing. What I encourage you to do is to seek out people that are transgender. learn more about it. Do a little research. Find out what's going on in your community. Find out the laws that they're trying to pass. And everything starts local. Everything starts local. Talk to your city council people. Talk to your representatives. Let them know what you expect of them. We have to be vocal because there's a minority, and they are a minority, that are very vocal against us. So we have to stand up, and we're the majority, but we have to stand up and be just as vocal. And it can happen. Part of the grant that we got here at the church this year, we chose to support Pride. And we're going to continue to do that in the future if that's possible. But another thing that I'm teaching the Trans Inclusion in Congregations curriculum. But also, I just finished the Mosaic Curriculum Facilitator program with Texas UGM. And Mosaic is an anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural program. And so I'm going to be working with them to teach that statewide, but we're also going to be looking at presenting it here. And the reason that I bring that up is because the grant was for learning to advocate for the LGBTQ BIPOC community. And that's something that if you look through the people that were killed this year or committed suicide, the numbers that I read, 7 in 10 of the people who were victims of violence were people of color. So this Mosaic curriculum will help us to understand the BIPOC community as well. Because there are things coming at the transgender community and at the LGBTQ community, but it's specially targeted for the BIPOC community. Again, like I said, I can walk in to a restaurant, I can walk into a store. Good morning, sir. I'm privileged. There are many people that are not. So my hope is that we all work together. We learn more about each other, and we make a plan to support our trans community in all the attacks that they receive continually. So what I ask of you today is let's commit together to do what we can do to stand up and support those who cannot stand up for themselves, because we can make a difference.